Barsby. Welcome to Laclede County Commission meeting.
Thank you.
And we will go ahead and allow you to make your presentation. I did make the commissioners copies,
Okay.
and I have mine on the on my laptop, but Linda may want a copy. I know you have. You said you had
I
extra.
need some copies. Yep.
So if you want to.
This one. And I put some business cards and stuff in there for you guys. That will help you guys just know a little bit about the letters of council and stuff.
Okay, good.
You got a couple of letters of reference, did you not, sir? From Mr. Judge Winfrey and from Steve Atkins?
I got one from Judge Winfrey.
And Mr. Atkins must be coming.
Okay.
He was out of town until yesterday. So
Okay.
I brought a copy of what he sent to me, but
Okay.
it wasn't on his letterhead or anything else. The Literacy Council's been here for about 36 years in Laclede County, helping adults learn to read. Okay, we're at the library for many, many years. We outgrew that. We're now down at Chalet Village, and we have a 7-office suite where we have tutors in each one of those offices that are busy every single hour of every single day, working with adults in our county. We do everything from basic literacy, adults that don't read at all, to HiSet preparation, to some English as a second language work, to helping some folks get their citizenships, to adult education in numeracy, in digital literacy, and the biggest thing we do right now is job preparation. Okay, how do we get those folks that have been receivers of things in our community to be givers to things in our community, citizens of our community, and make sure they get a job? And that's what we're tracking right now is how many of the people over the last 8 years since I've been there, how many of those people are working now? And whether we've made a difference, whether they've gone on to school, whether they've gotten a job, whether they've gotten a promotion. So that's some of the data that we're looking at now. And we have some of it, but not all of it from the past. So that's kind of who am I? Most of you probably don't even know who I am. My name is Dr. Carol Barsby.
I don't. I'm Erik Lindsey.
Nice to meet you, Erik.
Joe Wasmer.
And we've known each other for a while.
For a while. Hi, how are you? How are you? I came to Laclede County and to Pulaski County, actually the border between Laclede and Pulaski County, 35 years ago, and have been here ever since. We absolutely love it here. We came from South Dakota, where it's still winter in South Dakota, and now it's summer here.
What part of South Dakota?
Brookings, South Dakota.
Where's that at?
It's in West River. I'm sorry, it's East River, just north of Sioux Falls, about an hour and a half on the Minnesota border.
Okay.
And got out of the military. That's where my parents were at the time. And bought a restaurant and owned a restaurant for many, many years, and decided that was too much work for old people. So we went back to school. I got my teaching certificate, and I taught here in the state of Missouri for 20 years. Set up the first at-risk program for adults in the state of Missouri. Won the governor's award for that program.
Where was that at?
That was in Dixon.
Dixon, okay.
And then we carried that over, and we wrote another one in Iberia and another one in Lakeway. So as I got one settled, I would go to the next town and help them set up one. So those were pretty good programs. We never before had reading programs at high school levels. We thought everybody by the time you got to high school learned to read. I'll never forget the one little boy. He was a senior in high school. It was about 3 weeks before graduation. And he walked into my room and he said, "I don't think I can read." He's a really good kid. He was enrolled in college and everything. He says, "I don't think I can read." And I said, "Well, tell me about it." And it was about comprehension. And I said, "Okay, well, every time you see a period, think of it as a stop sign and think about what that sentence was about, and then read the next one. Think about what it was about." And he looked at me like I was kind of crazy and went next door to Mrs. Canfield's room, and she was like the high school English teacher, so she would know so much more than the reading teacher. And she said, "Well, you know, I used to do that, but I did it so much it became automatic." So then this is the kid at graduation 3 weeks later, grabs the microphone from the superintendent and said, "Guess what? I learned to read in the last 3 weeks." In front of that whole crowd at graduation. But, so I've worked with adult education and high school education reading a lot. And there are so many things we need. Do you know that 27% of the people in Laclede County can't read the road signs that you're driving down the road with? 27% of the people in Laclede County.
That makes sense now, because the ones that are octagonal, that has STOP on them,
They don't get
that's
that.
the ones they can't, yeah, I wonder who
Who those people were.
One of them, my daughter-in-law met one of them right out here the other day.
Did she? Yeah.
Wow. That's not good.
No.
We work with not only with adult education, but with family literacy. So we have a lot of organizations and things that we work with families and their children, because oftentimes children that don't learn to read come from low literacy families, homes. And so if the parents don't read, they don't put a lot of emphasis on that at home, and so the children don't learn to read. And so then we have this generational problem in literacy. So we work with a lot of family literacy. We also work with second chance citizens. We're really lucky here in Laclede County that our judges tell everyone who does not have a GED, that's on probation or parole, they have 1 year to receive that certification, or they'll be in violation of their parole or probation. And they're very, very good at keeping track of that. I mean, I keep track of every time they come and everybody signs, and if they miss 3 meetings in a row, they get violated. I mean, because we know that it's a huge percentage of people that get an education, either during their prison time or after their prison time, do not repeat. There's lowest recidivism. And if that's a change that we can make in Laclede County, that's a big deal. If we can keep those repeaters from coming back and back and back into the system. So we have probation officers and parole officers every day, federal and state, that bring us those folks, and they walk in the door with them and introduce them to our lady that does that, and says, this is who, and they sit down and they talk about the rules. And the rules at our place are, we will not hide you, we will not hinder the police from fighting you, we'll not do any of those things. But this is a safe place. So if the police call me and say, is Drew gonna be there today, I need to pick him up, I will tell them the truth, and then I will meet them in the parking lot with that offender. We don't want them to come into the building and scare everybody else, but they'll meet me in the parking lot and take care of that. And I think that speaks a lot, that they still continue to come. And after a little while, they hate it when they start, oh, I don't have to be here. About a month later, they really enjoy it. I worked with a young man last night that I don't normally work with, and he was really hard to deal with. Last night, he came in and his tutor wasn't there, and I said, well, why don't you just sign that you came in today, and I'll write down that your tutor was absent. He said, no, I want to learn some math. Okay, we'll do that. And so after a while, they realize it's safe and it's comfortable and it's a good place to be. Literacy is so many things besides just reading and writing though. Numbers is a big thing. Banks do a lot of things for us, checking accounts. We do a lot of things with just adding and subtracting, multiplying and dividing, learning to use a calculator, finding the calculator on your telephone. You wouldn't believe the number of people that have those really expensive devices. They don't know how to do anything with them but text. Just use their thumbs. So we do a lot of those kind of things, a lot of digital literacy, especially for older citizens of the community. They want to learn how to email their kids. They want to learn how to use that computer. They want to learn how to look up things on that computer. Because you'll see a young person come in and say, there you go. You'll see a young person come in and say, you ask them a question, they just ask it into their phone and they get the answer immediately, no matter how silly it is. And people don't realize we can do that. And so we teach a lot of those kinds of things and how you can help it, how you can use a calendar to remember things. One of the most important things we do is job skills training, preparing folks for a job, and so many of those soft skills. Oh my goodness, call in if you're not coming. Call in if you're gonna be late. Come every week. Speak nicely to the receptionist in the office. Do you know most people who lose their first and second job only lose them because they can't communicate with their bosses? They don't know how to speak kindly to others or appropriately or listen appropriately. So all of those job skills training, we're hoping to add the key skills training to our group. And are you familiar with the key skills training? It's the one I used when I was worked at the Career Center. And it's just a whole list of those hard skills that folks need to know for a job. So say you want to go to school to be a welder. These are the hard skills you should have learned in high school in order to go to that college and be able to do that, or go to that trade school and be able to do that. And we've talked about it many times, being able to have those key skills tests and training available to us. It's kind of expensive. So we use an online program that's not quite as expensive for us, but it would be really good for those folks that are going into the trades, those folks that are going into jobs, to be able to have that key skill training in our area instead of having to go away for it. Now they're going all the way to Lebanon Juniors at high school take it, all the juniors at our high school take it, but, we don't have any way for adults to take that at this point in time. In the last 9 years since I've been here, 2,565 adults and families have come through the program. In the last 2 months, 21 months, we're not quite to the end of the second year, 423 adults and families. 54% of those are men and 46% of those are women. Isn't that amazing? 70 new high school equivalency certificates have been handed out. And if you've never come to our graduations, please do that. I had 10 or 11 people that graduated first part of May, and we had over 150 family members and friends come to watch them graduate and stand up and cheer and holler and yell. And now I've had over 50 new clients walk in that came to see grandma get their HiSet or brother come to get their HiSet and figure, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. So we get a big blossom right after each one of our graduations. 72% of our adults are in recovery. So most of the folks that walk through our door are one way or another, either short term, I've been sober, long term, I've been sober, I'm not quite sober yet, okay? So 72% of those people are in recovery of some sort.
I probably can't save all my questions.
Okay,
so that you
go
know,
ahead and
so
ask
can I
anytime.
ask the- Okay. So out of those 72%, is that, when you say recovery, alcohol, drugs, what's the breakdown of that?
Alcohol, drugs, family abuse, anger management. Most of them are alcohol and drugs. We see more alcohol now than we did a few years ago, a few less drugs than we saw in 2021, but those recovery pieces. I have 3 people that work for me that are over 5 years sober, and so they have that peer connection, they have that ability to have the empathy. I don't know really what it's really like to go through withdrawal, but those folks do it so they can have conversations. Yes, feel free to ask questions at any time. 35% of the people at this point in time are second chancers, okay? And that information is all on the 3rd slide. But those second chancers are people that come from probation and parole. And that varies and fluctuates over the time of year, and there's times when the federal people let a whole bunch of people off parole, and then they put a whole bunch of new people on, and so it fluctuates, but right now there's 35% of those people. We get a lot of our funding from AmeriCorps, which is a government grant. It's been taking a lot of cuts. They ended 886 programs in the United States the last day of April, midnight on the last day of April. We were one of the 130 that were saved. So we had a program that fit into the guidelines, that fit into what our Congress and our Senate and our President think that we ought to be doing with this AmeriCorps funds. So one of the very few, there were 8 programs saved in the state of Missouri is all, out of all of our programs. So we were really pleased to get that recognition and have people realize that we're doing that. About 83% of our funding comes from AmeriCorps. So if that would be slashed a little more, that would be even a bigger problem for us. But all that AmeriCorps does is provide living allowance for my volunteers, provide for rent, provide for FIC and fringe benefits for those. No supplies, nothing extra, just those employees. So I have 10 people that work for me on a full-time basis that are paid with those AmeriCorps funds, and then that AmeriCorps money's gone. So it doesn't take long for that AmeriCorps money to go away. But it allows us to have volunteers that are there 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. Because if we don't, and you can't come on Tuesday because you work at McDonald's, but you show up on Wednesday, the person that's volunteering for you didn't come on Wednesday, so then we may not have somebody help. So it's really worked well to have that steady group of people there. We still have a lot of volunteers that help us. We get a lot of rest of our funding from the Luminary Foundation, from Emerson, who's always given us a big check. I don't know how that'll work out now. I've worked on that a little bit. The Wish You Well Foundation is a national foundation that provides us some money. Dollar General is so kind and generous to us every single year. In fact, the man from Sedalia comes and hands us our check every year, so we're really pleased about that. We just got $8,000 from them, and that's always a nice check that we can use for things. Pro Literacy Learning Lab helps to provide us with the online information, the online programs that we use, because we not only do in-house where you can come to me, but we'll do some Zooms too. So we can use that, and the National Book Fund provides us with a lot of our books. So we keep things covered a little bit, but not enough to ever let us grow. I put in your packet, and I think Randy ran off for you, this list of how to spend opioid settlement funds. Have you guys seen this list before? You have, okay. Well, it's just a list of all the way that you could spend those funds. And we get a few funds from the Pulaski County opioid settlement because we do some things at the jail in Pulaski County. We do some things at the jail in Greene County. Those are all Zooms. Greene County is having trouble hiring deputies, but they can't hire anybody without a high school diploma. So when you hear on the news, we've hired these 19 new people and they're going to become deputies in the next 9 months, well, some of that is paid work to get their HiSet, so then they can be eligible to be hired as a deputy. So, and we do all that work for them because the Greene County Literacy Council only works with children, okay? We also do a lot of work at both Conway High School and here at Lebanon High School. So we're working with those folks and what's going on there too. If you look, and I think I wrote those down, if you look on the first page of that opioid settlement piece, you'll look at A5. Let's look at the fifth one. It says to support mobile intervention, treatment, and recovery services offered by qualified professionals, service vendors such as peer recovery coaches, persons with OID and co-occurring conditions, and persons who have experience in opioid overdose. So we do provide those mobile services already. We just are not paid for those. We have a young man who will pick up anybody at the jail that's being released that doesn't have a ride. We take them directly to our office and make sure that they get their social security card, make sure they get a ID card or a driver's license. We help them find that birth certificate, because oftentimes they've lost all of those things while they're in jail. And I can't do anything without a social security card and an ID card. So we help them do all those kinds of things. Those are the services we provide. We also provide mobile treatment by transporting folks to other places here in our community that offer services. And that's one of those things we'd like to move is that need for so much transportation all the way across town. So I work with lots of different organizations that do that. If you look at A8, coaches, recovery outreach specialists, that one's all about education. Healthcare providers, first responders, students, and other supportive professionals, such as peer recovery coaches, recovery outreach specialists, including telementoring, all of those kinds of things. So that's all that same kind of piece. If we look at B, oh, that's A, I'm sorry, I was reading from B. Let's go to B.
So did you mean to include
A8 and A5, A5 and A8, and I read it wrong ones. So I go to part 2, number 1. All forms of medical assisted treatment. Every peer specialist that you have has to go through a course on medically assisted treatment. And not everyone gets medically assisted treatment. I'm on,
Are you on B1?
That's still B, yep, I'm on B1. Sorry, B1. And that medical assisted treatment is not needed by everybody, is not wanted by everybody, but is really, really valuable for most people. It should be on page 1. Yep, my B says page 1.
I'm lost, Carol.
Yep, I am too, you're gonna find that.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Here's that B1 page. Is that B1 page? So look at that first one at the top of there. We'll start with that one. That one's about the MAT training, the medically assisted treatment training. Okay?
Well, B1, I'm looking at it, I don't,
Same one I hear you.
I'm gonna have to.
Schedule B approved uses for opioids, and it says it's page, yeah, this is 13 and 14.
know, that in there starts off at 14, it's got B, support people in treatment.
Okay, that's the second, this is the page right before that. This page goes right before the one that you just read me. This is 1 through 13.
Yeah, but 14's on the next page.
14 is on the next page.
I've got 1 through 16.
That's in mine, page number 3, the third staple page.
Here's 1 through 13.
And then I've got 14 through 15.
14
Takes
through
up
15 on the next section. Here's those first 2 pages. That's all we're gonna talk about, are those 2 pages. I just wanted you to have it all. And I will make sure that you get one that fits all in the correct order. Sorry about that, guys.
Alright, so you're in B, part 1, provide comprehensive wraparound services to individuals.
For MAT training, yes. No, I gave mine away. I'm sorry, guys, I'm watching it on.
Oh,
I made this last one for me today,
Absolutely.
Okay, the second one there provides, B2 provides, recovery service for opioid and other mental health diseases conditions, including housing, peer support services, counseling, community navigators, case management, and community-based services. We provide case management for all of our folks that come to us through probation and parole.
Joe, page 2.
We already do that.
Page
Did you
2,
find
you're
your
still
statement at?
the second page.
It's, what, do 1 through 14, I handed it to you, and then,
B2.
yeah.
got it?
Carol, can I ask you
Yes.
a question?
This
Yes.
page is the exact same page.
Opioid use
That's what I'm saying.
disorder support treatment of opioid use, okay. Okay, I was needing the definitions
Yeah.
of some of the acronyms, but they're on the
And-
front page, so I found what I was
Okay.
looking for.
Co-occurring is mental health diseases and other substance abuse. SUD is other substance abuse disorder and mental health conditions. Okay, so all of those fall into that. We provide case management already, although we don't call it that. Connection to community-based services, we don't call it that yet. We do not have counseling at this time, but we do have peer support specialists. And those peer support specialists are the ones that work with so many of our probation and parole folks. If we go down to 2.8 on that same page, employment training and educational services for that same group of people. And we go down to 2.10 on that same page, engage nonprofits, faith-based communities, and community coalitions to support people in treatment and recovery, supports family members in their efforts to support the person with a disorder, okay? So we do all of those things already, and I know there are a lot of other organizations in our community that do those same things. And we work very closely with all of those other organizations, but our people have to travel. They have to go here, they have to go there, they have to go other places, and yes, that helps them meet other important adults in their lives, they make other connections, those kinds of things, but so many people don't have that transportation. So what we like to kind of work on is a one-stop shop, where a lot of those services would be offered in our Chalet Village. And we have several openings there in Chalet Village where we could put different organizations and different groups and help them be there and be where people could get to them very quickly. We'd like to offer anger management courses, AA courses during the daytime, because all the AA courses in our area are nighttime, because that's when people can teach them. And NA meetings, we like to offer them during the daytime as well as evening. We'd like for those courses to be non-secular. Not everybody wants to go to a church in order to gain those services. So we would like ours to be non-secular, just make it a little different, maybe find a different group of people. We don't want to take people away from any other group. We don't want to affect any other group. In fact, if we have some funds and we can share those funds, we'd be happy to do that. But we need to be able to make a tighter coalition of folks. I belong to that coalition group that meets collaborative group that meets once a month, and we talk about how we can all work together to do things. And we're moving out of those those nonprofit silos into an ability to work together a little bit. But Lebanon is still very much a group of silos, and because there's only so much money in Lebanon. There's only so much money here.
Let me make a comment there.
Okay.
And it's, just consider the source.
Okay.
You know, this reminds me back when we were doing the CARES Act funding. And one of the suggestions that I had, which isn't a novel suggestion, wiser people thought of it well before I would have even thought of it. But the need that our community has that, and I don't like the word collaborative, but
Okay.
but I will use it.
Okay.
So it would be extremely helpful, I think, for our community because one of the questions I had was cross/community, because it does seem like there's a lot of redundant efforts that are being made in our community. So as I'm sitting on this side of the table, trying to analyze and think about funding that we might have available, and the efficiency of that. And that's probably my business background. I want to see the best use of those funds. And so I think that's a real need in our community, because we do operate in those silos, and it makes it very difficult for me then to filter that and say, okay, with the dollars available, whether it's personal money or public money through the opioid fund, it's a challenge, Carol.
How do you select one nonprofit and not another?
Yes.
Those are really hard questions.
Yeah.
And that's where somewhere along the line we have to figure out how to work together, and that's where these meetings are starting, is how do we work together, and do we really need 5 food pantries? Or do we need 2 good food pantries, and we could work together to do that? And do we need, and that comes from me from education for years and years and years. There's only so much money to spend, and you gotta figure out how to put it all together and make it work together. Because we don't wanna offend anybody by saying, I'm gonna give a bunch of money to this person and none to this person, and you've gotta be really careful about that. But if we could find a way to silo that all together. Judge Winfrey's been really good at helping us make those connections and understand how those folks can work together, and using the treatment court to force us to work together a little bit. We've worked a lot with Judge Winfrey. He's been wonderful to us, and he's wonderful to the people. And I know he started out not thinking that drug court was the way to go. I know that's where he started, but he really advocates for it now, and advocates that we've got to all work together and be one being. And I think if we could figure out how to do that, that would be a wonderful piece of the puzzle. We work with all 3 of the health centers, Jordan Valley, Compass, and Mole. I don't know if they're gonna say.
Hey, I'm with you.
It'll come to me. And we work with MOCA, Missouri Ozark Community Action. We work with Elevate Lebanon. We work with Lane Change. We work with the Career Center, Probation and Parole. Matt Fredericks, Sheriff Fredericks is on our board, and we work with a lot of folks through those folks. In fact, we have meetings every once in a while with Matt, with some of my parolees, because they have a hard time learning that policemen are people too. And every time you see them, they're not there to arrest you, and you don't need to be afraid of them. And Matt is really good at that, come and have conversations about cars or fishing or whatever with those folks, and just say, I'm a person too. Sometimes I have a job to do and sometimes I don't, but I'm a person. Treat me like a person and I'll treat you like a person. And that works out really well with my folks. I had one young man who'd been in the trouble with law for, 30 years. And he's been sober for 10 now. Works for me. And he was still afraid of Matt. Still after all that time. So we had an oil painting donated to us from Ann Huff. Do you remember Ann Huff? She did all those beautiful paintings. She donated some to the Literacy Council to use for fundraisers. And so this young man chose one that he thought Matt would like and gave it to him to hang in his office. And that was a big deal for him to come here to this building, to the office, and not think, they're gonna arrest me if I walk in there. And he'd been sober for 20 years, and he'd been out of trouble for all this time, and he was still afraid. And so those are the kind of things that we have to help people get over, those soft skill things, so they can break back into society and become citizens for us. The next few slides of the proposal, what we like to do. The key skills education is really important to us for job training. Other job readiness tools, maybe some mentorships, those kind of things. Peer counseling is a huge deal. We need at least one more peer counselor to be out there in the community with that empathy that can help with those pieces. Wraparound services, peer counselors will offer those wraparound services we were talking about. Just kind of wrap you in an envelope, and whatever you need, they make sure you get it in one way or another, or explain to you why you can't have that service. And those are really difficult conversations, because sometimes people think they're eligible for you should do something for me. You owe me because I spent 10 years in jail. No, we don't owe you. You need to come out, and I had this discussion yesterday. You have to be 3 times as good as somebody that's never been in trouble before the community's gonna decide that you're good. You know, you can't run the stop sign. You have to be 3 times as good in order to get the respect that somebody that's not been in trouble can get. And that's hard for them to learn, and it takes a long time, and sometimes they don't ever get it just because of their past. Maybe because of their name. We're a small community, that's the way it goes. There's some more facts on the top of the next page. Earning a HiSet degree decreases recidivism by 47%, increases continuing recovery by 32%. Isn't that amazing? Amazing facts. I can't even believe those every time I read them. Entering trade school makes it even better. If I can get you in a trade school, even if you don't finish it, if I can get you there and get you started, that reduces recidivism even more. Provides a workforce for Laclede County. And everywhere I go in Laclede County, we're always talking about our workforce. Make sure that our workforce is prepared for the job. And so when I wrote my AmeriCorps grant, what I said was Lebanon is no longer a hard hat community, and it's not. We have factories, but they're not hard hat factories. They're not dirty work. They're now clean factories. They're now those factories that require an education, require you to be able to run the computer, require you to be able to run the CNC machine, and those things aren't easy. In fact, 2 of our factories here in town require a literacy test to get hired and a literacy test to get promoted, because you have to be able to read the directions, read the safety stuff, read that information and comprehend. You have to be able to do enough math that you can set that CNC map for a piece this size today and this size tomorrow out of the same machine. That all takes skills. That's not screwing the nail into the boat anymore. And so those skills, we've got to prepare people for those skills. We do a lot of resume writing already, interview preparedness. Do not know the number of people that don't know how to shake hands. I mean, this young man shook my hand right away. But a lot of young men don't know how to do that anymore. Nobody's ever taught them that. Isn't that silly? Just responsible communication. We want to add a peer recovery coach. We already do all that work, but we need to have the ACTA certification for those folks. And that's a $75 training. It's not hard to do. Go to Jeff City for 2 days and learn how to hold confidentiality, how to be empathetic, how to listen more than you talk, all of those kinds of things. That's what that training is. And it gives them a lot of information that they need. And gives them lived experiences. The peer coaches are that continuum of care, that ladder. Here you need a lot, you need less and less and less and less and less until you're on your own. And so whether we start with getting HUD to help you pay for one of the rooms at the hotel, to getting you a little less help, till eventually you have your own apartment. One of our young ladies just yesterday moved into her own home. She'd been at the Cope House for a long time, for almost 2 years. She got her high school diploma. She'd gotten all of those things. She'd lived in their houses. She lived in their apartment. She just got her own apartment for the first time in her whole life, and she's my age. And she was really excited about that. And that, her education and the help from Cope and all of those places made a difference in that she could get there. A community navigator is a little different than that. That community navigator can be a jail navigator, they could actually go into the jail and help with several of those things, ID cards, all those things before they get out of jail. They can help them prepare for jobs, they can help them at HiSet degree. In fact, we do go into the jail in Pulaski County and help as a navigator. They just hired one more new navigator there. We did lots of work inside the jail here in Laclede County until they started the addition, and it was so hard to get people in the building. So I believe that we're just about ready to start allowing us to do that again. And that makes a big difference when those folks can have something to do with their time. If they choose to come, they come to me an hour a week, we work on the skills, I send them home with some paper, they beg a pencil from the guard when they won't poke anybody with it, and work on their math or work on whatever they're doing, or read a book that they can talk to me about, or something that's legal in the jail and come back and talk to me about it again. Not only gives them something to do while they're incarcerated, but it builds on that mind, builds on that confidence. And almost 60% of the people that started in jail will come to us once they're released here and finish their education. And that's a big deal. If we can just get them started and while they're in a closed community, realize that I'm not scary, I'm not gonna make fun of you, I'm not gonna look down at you, I'm not gonna put you down, we're gonna be okay, come see me when you get out. And that makes a huge difference. And then I have a relationship so I can call and say, I know you're at, come and see me, you know, because I already have that relationship. So a lot of people can't do that. The last page here is I just put together a little bit of a budget. Gives you some ideas. We would match that 50-50, whatever you could give us, we could match 50-50 with either local funds or AmeriCorps funds. We would be more than willing to take a chunk of that and monitor that grant all the way around. I monitor a $450,000 AmeriCorps grant now, and I've done that for 9 years. So I'm pretty good at managing that money and spreading that money around and sharing that money. Right now we have members at L Life, we have members at the Career Center, at the Hughes Center. We've had members at Amber before. We provide members at those places, and they do services at those places. It might be education services, it might ON 360, it might be just awareness services. Like we got to 360 and play ping pong. Dr. Richter goes out to 360 and plays ping pong with those guys and makes a relationship, and then after a month he can say, why don't you come on over here, work on that tutoring, Carol will help you with that math a little bit. Or if they drop out, we can get them back. In fact, I do all our high school dropouts that walk through our door because I can make it really miserable, much more miserable than school. And most of them will go back to school after spending a little bit of time with me. Because that HiSet degree is so much harder than just getting a high school diploma. Most people that get a high school diploma in anywhere, not just Lebanon, anywhere, couldn't pass this HiSet. It's hard. 5 subtests, writing, lots and lots of math, tremendous amount of history. The history comes right off the naturalization test. So what immigrants have to do to be able to become U.S. citizens, and it's a lot of history, a lot of economics, lots and lots of government, more than we teach in our high school staff, because we don't test that, so we don't teach it as much. But we just have relationships with so many people and help so many people in our community become citizens of our community, because many of them are consumers. And if we could move just a few from consumers to citizens, it'd make a difference. Sometimes I get myself in trouble when I say this last line, but I'm going to say it anyway because I truly believe it. If we would spend a little bit more of our money on education and job preparedness, in a very short amount of time, we'd have to spend less money on emergency services, less money on food pantries, less money on shelter, because more of those people would be able to take care of themselves and take care of their families. And so as we look at the money we spend, if we'd work on spending a little bit of that on education, we would decrease over here fairly quickly the amount of emergency services we need to provide for people. And if we as a group of nonprofits could learn to work together, and the only way that's going to happen is if somebody forces us to do that. Because right now we're all competing for the same money in the community, and there's only so much. I think the page Javas guy says he has 5 or 6 people a day walk in and beg money for him. Can you imagine that? So we have not asked for a lot of money from Lebanon. We get most of our money through grants. Cause it's just not, there just isn't enough to go around, and there's so many wonderful nonprofits, so many. And that's why we haven't been able to do some of these bigger things, because we don't ask the local people for money. There's just not enough to go around for everybody. What, can I answer questions for you, or
I have
about,
a couple,
okay,
but I'm not sure how relevant they are.
Just ask.
And you have answered some of them. What's your gross budget?
$449,000 this year.
And that's the AmeriCorps budget?
That's the AmeriCorps
that you
funding.
alluded to? Okay.
83% of that is AmeriCorps, 17% of that is not.
Okay, and, paid staff, how many paid staff do you have?
One, me. And then the 10 members are considered volunteers with a living allowance. So I'm the only paid staff in the office, and I only work 30 hours a week, which turns into 50, but I'm paid for 30.
Sure.
But then the AmeriCorps folks are called members, which are volunteers with a living allowance.
Okay.
So they get enough money to drive back and forth to work, have some lunch, not enough to live on.
That'd be 10,000 a year, 15,000 a year?
It's $16,665 a year.
Okay. And you have 10 of those?
I have 10 of those folks.
Okay. And then, I made several notes in some of the questions that like regional, it sounds like that, your reach goes beyond the borders of Laclede County. Now, some of that might be through the use of technology, right?
Yes.
But I guess when I think of Laclede County,
Sure.
and I think of how we meet the needs here, that just popped into my mind, that it sounded like it was a little regional as opposed to Laclede County.
The funding is kept very separate because of the Laclede Area Foundation. We have to keep all that funding separate. Anything that we spend outside of Laclede County is kept completely separate from what we spend inside the county. Because Laclede County's got to, Laclede Area Foundation's got to know that that money stays right here.
Okay. Yeah, and then I just have some philosophical, and we don't really wanna go down that road, so.
Well, give me one.
Well, so, are you sure?
Yep.
Cause I,
You will not hurt my feelings.
cause I get kinda passionate
It's
about
okay.
some things. So I'm gonna make two statements here,
Okay.
and Jack's gonna write them down
Okay.
and quote me in the
Put 'em in the
newspaper.
newspaper. Be
and-
nice, Jack.
And I'm gonna be the bad guy.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of work that can be done with faith-based organizations, okay? So when I heard the word secular, I kinda get that.
Okay.
But I think our faith-based organizations have a big role in this.
Mhm.
In speaking with Judge Winfrey and, you know, the drug court and the success that it's been. I know in the conversations I had, you know, without a component in there that's faith-based, it's not gonna be as successful,
That's right.
okay? So that's just a Randy Angst comment.
Well, and that's a very fair comment.
Okay.
On the other side of the coin, there are some people who do not attend those meetings
Oh.
because of where it is.
And I'm
that's
sure, and there's barriers there that need to be,
Lots of things. And so if we just had one small program that fit the needs of that group of people, we've gotta have a variety. You can't have just one thing. You've gotta have some secular, some religious-based, some, gotta have all those pieces of the puzzle so everybody gets what they need. And these folks become very connected to their people. So the people at Lane Change, they got young people that go there, very connected to those people. They do everything at Lane Change. They wouldn't say anything nice about any other organization because they're so connected to that organization. And my people really like my people, and we never say anything bad about anybody when I can hear it. I'm sure they do. But they become very connected to people because they've never had adults in their lives that were meaningful to them. They didn't have a father that took care of that things. They didn't have. And so there has to be life point in church. There has to be all of those different pieces of the puzzle. So everybody can find a place where they feel like it's home to them.
Sure.
And I'm sure I'm against it, I go to church every Sunday, but I do know that there are people who don't.
I just think that's a role that, our faith-based community could take even a bigger role
Yes, they could.
in that. And I think that's my point,
Mhm.
is I think our faith-based community can step up and help, even more than what they do. But the other thing that you said that I'm always curious about, the United States spends more per student than most any other country in the world on education. And I'm a strong advocate for parental control, school choice, vouchers, let the parent decide. So if we're dealing with all this after the fact, and we're going to invest all this money beyond that, and I'm hearing that we have a portion of students that are unable to read, that's really disturbing to me, because they're going through the education system, and now we're investing more at a later point that should have been caught and taken care of earlier. And those are just comments that I have. It has nothing to do, you have such a challenge to do. And it shows, and you're very passionate about it, and I like passion, but I also like good, healthy discussion.
Yes.
And so, if I were just to sit here and be silent, I just wouldn't be, I wouldn't be Randy Angst. And so that's where I'm having a bridge that I have to build, so that we can work together. And I think it's gonna start, not here for this discussion, but I really think maybe, because you have passion, you've mentioned it, putting together all these organizations in the community. So in my world, again, coming from private sector, you allocate dollars where you get the best return on investment.
Yes, very much.
And I'm not talking about just, because here we're talking about human lives. We're talking about culture, we're talking about kids, we're talking about so much more that you can't put a price on.
Yes.
So I'm not talking about that. But how do we invest those dollars? That's a challenge I wanna put out to you.
To get the biggest buck.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, when we talk about education, and I'm a real supporter of education, the folks that we see come through our door that are high school students that are just not too many years beyond high school, we're often in special education programs. Often they're autistic kids that grow out of that to a degree, and as you get older, you do grow out of that and you learn to control that more and more. A lot of those folks. We see a lot of homeschool folks. Homeschooling is either done very, very well, or you're too lazy to get up and put your kid on the bus. I mean, it's one or the other, there's nothing in the middle. But those kids that want to go to college have to get that high school diploma. That high school equivalency is the same thing as that diploma to be admitted to school. And most of them can get through all of that at home except for math. And then we do some of that math for them, and then to help them take that test. Because quadratic equation, exponentials, and all of those things are really difficult, and a lot of parents aren't capable of doing just that math section. The older folks we see, 35 to 55 is a big age group, and we just didn't have as many people going to high school at that age. I mean, that's not on our schools. That's, a lot of men went out and got a job at the end of 8th grade or at the end of 9th grade, 45 years ago. We see a fairly large group. Our second largest group is 55 and over. Adults that either did never learn to read, and think how smart you have to be to get through this world 55 years and not learn to read, or have not used it enough to retain the skills it takes to comprehend and those kinds of things. And new words. Think of all the new words that have been created in the last 20 years. They can't, if they don't have phonetic skills, they can't figure out those words, they don't know what they mean. So our education system is fabulous and it does a wonderful job, but there are folks we leave behind. And it just breaks my heart as a high school at-risk teacher that I didn't help everybody. Our graduation scores were going up and we were wonderful, and then we find out that we weren't helping everybody. I had 2 little boys in 6 months ago, came through Stoutland and couldn't count change. Well, that's not something that we do after about 3rd grade. You know, that really drops out of the curriculum. We assume you know how to do that and we move on to other math. You would lose the number of kids and adults that can't read an analog clock, because all they ever see is a digital clock. The only place you see an analog clock with hands is at schoolrooms. Schools do a fabulous job, and Lebanon does a really nice job. And Heidi Conti and I work really close together she's one of my members, and she works really close together with me to say, okay, this kid needs to be scared back to school, or this kid's just not gonna make it and I want him to have something. Or this kid's already gotten kicked out of our options program, he needs something. So we make sure that we don't leave those kids behind. It's kind of a closed circuit when we talk to Heidi, and we keep those kids in some sort of the process when they're young. But we only have 1 young student this year at graduation, the rest of them are 35 and older. So that's a difference. I understand what you're saying when you say we spend all this money on kids, how can that happen? I don't know how it happens, but it does. And we're getting better at fixing it every year. I trained teachers nationally in reading and writing skills for 8 years in the early 2000s. And my dissertation was on how many teachers understand phonics. There are 39 phonics rules in this world. I bet you couldn't name me 3 or 4. Most young teachers can't name me 3 or 4. If you don't know all the phonics rules, then a lot of words are the exception. Don't follow those. I don't learn phonics, that doesn't follow the rules. Well, you don't know all the rules. You know, there's a rule for when to use TION and when to use SION. There's a rule for when you use ER, OR, or UR. There's a rule for that, and they're very simple rules. But if you don't know the rules, if teachers don't know the rules because their college didn't teach phonetics, they can't teach it to kids. And so since that time, we've kind of gone on to different ideas. We do this in education all the time, and then we go back, and we've kind of gone on to something a little away from phonics. And now we're kind of going back there, and I'm really pleased to see that, because that's how you learn to attack new words. You see words all the time in computer work that don't follow the English language rules. Nobody figures out how they spell that word at all. Well, it's because they don't know any rules. You can't create a new word if you don't understand the rules for the English language. And so, you know, there's just so many of those things that happen, but our schools do great. And our teachers do everything they can, our young teachers do it. The professional development that our schools give our young teachers is wonderful. They just can't meet the needs of every single student. There are those really gifted students and those really LD students that sometimes you just can't. If I have 40 kids in my room, I can't do it all for everybody. Does that make sense? No?
Well, there's not one size that fits all.
That's right.
So, Carol, let's draw back to your
Okay.
to your request here. So, we don't have anywhere near this amount of funds.
That's fine.
I mean, period. Right now, your request, we have maybe half of that.
Okay.
Is all we have. And we didn't budget all of that for this year.
What is the list? It's kind of tiny.
It's 80
Okay.
with a match of 80. And we would take any portion of that. That's my goal for my foundation funding for next
So
year.
give me one thing,
Okay?
because I heard a lot of different needs here, and I see your list, but all I want is one thing.
Peer counselor. Another peer counselor that could be trained and prepared to actually work with those folks with disabilities, with UOI, opioid problems, behavior mental health problems, other substance abuse problems. And I think they's out of $20,000 at, what was
30.
30.
It's a peer coach, the same.
Peer
as a
coach is the
peer
same thing, yes.
Counselor.
Yes. We could provide the training, we'll match, anything that you can give us, we'll match with other funds. That 82 is what I'm looking for from foundation money for this year, altogether. If you could provide any portion of that, that would be fabulous.
Do we have any questions for Carol?
That's just a lot.
Well, I mean, you've answered most all for me,
Okay.
of course, the most part of that. My biggest one was, you know, that here in Laclede County, that if we're going to be able to help out with any of this and stuff, that I was at that mindset where Randy had brought it up, you know, how much that's gonna stay here in Laclede County, where's that money gonna be, what's it gonna be for, you know, the allocations, who's gonna trace that, and go from there.
Well, and
So,
then I
and
would
you
tra-
answered that, so,
I would trace that any way you needed it traced.
right. So that would be.
Anything from you, sir?
And Carol, I would just try myself to end on a positive note, because I tend to want to be the other side just for those discussions, okay?
That's fun, that's,
We
without the discussion,
we
how
are
would we grow?
so blessed to live in this community.
Very much.
And you have so many volunteers, that serve this community. And then there's so many individuals like yourself that are passionate about what you do. So we have a lot to be thankful for, to call Laclede County. So I appreciate what you do. Our ability to help fund your proposal is gonna be very, very, very limited, just due to the amount of funds that we have available. And, so this group will look and see if we can help you in any way. And we'll have that conversation if we can, okay?
And if we get together with 4 or 5 of the other nonprofits in our area, may we return to talk to you again about
Absolutely.
some of those collaborative
Yeah.
ideas that we could put
Yeah.
together?
Yeah,
I
we
like that.
have,
Together.
right now, I think, well, we only have what we budgeted, and we budgeted 30,000 for this year.
Okay.
And, ours will, be, received over a period of years, and those amounts will either be for a one-time, maybe a 3-year, some of them go out 15, 16 years. So the funds that we have coming in from the opioid settlement, just, I don't wanna say dribble in,
Yeah,
but
they do.
that's gonna be what it's gonna look like. So a program that would match the funds, again, might be a little easier to wrap thinking around.
Okay.
So we have a program versus a larger program.
Okay.
So for us, I'm thinking, I'm not speaking for the other commissioners, just for myself, it's easier for me to think, okay, if I had $5,000 to invest, where would I invest it at? As opposed to just putting $5,000 out there to an $80,000, or in this case, $160,000 project. That's how I think.
All right.
So that would be helpful, I think, for me.
Well, let me pare that budget down and just to an amount that might fit you better and tell you exactly how I would spend that money.
That would be,
I can send that to you.
that would be helpful.
Okay, I will send that
Would
to you.
would it alter or change or help us make a decision? We don't know, but it would be helpful, Carol.
That's fair, that's fair.
Yeah.
And we'll get together with that collaborative group
Yeah.
and maybe 3 or 4 of us will come and make a presentation if we
Yeah.
don't mind seeing us
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned transportation, and I know we've helped, Judge Winfrey in the drug court with, transportation before, and, you know, that was just one of the, some temporary housing. Of course, their funding's increased, so they have more
Yeah.
dollars available and more resources. But if there was just that little niche that we might be able to fill,
Okay,
is what I'm looking for.
okay, all right. We do have Missouri Ozark Community Action now just received $300,000 from the state government for transportation in our area. And so,
And you and I both are on the MOCA board.
there you go,
Yeah.
and so we can, we can move those funds a lot through MOCA, through their funds and those kind of things. Tony's really good at that, and I sat with him at the collaborative meeting this last week, and he announced that all that money had just come through the state. And so we can get rides to anywhere here in town. A little more difficult to take them to Waynesville to their testing. Maybe one thing that would be really good for us would be that key skills training and a place here in the community where people could take that HiSet exam and that key skills exam without them having to
Library,
drive.
is that available?
Well, it has to, you have to be certified as a place, you have to have the right kind of proctor, you have to have the right kind of room, they're just so particular.
But see, that makes my point right there.
Well, I think Gibbs gonna give us a room, so if we had the funds to start that, that might be one thing that would be really good for us. They did HiSet degrees here for tests here
That's what I
forever,
thought.
and they stopped doing it when OTC became a study site. And they figured that they would take all of that piece, well, they took all the pieces of the puzzle except for the testing, so Gibbs working on getting that testing back at Southwest, so we could do that, or South, it's not Southwest anymore.
Missouri.
Yeah. Missouri State.
Yeah.
Gibbs is on the state commission for AmeriCorps, and so he
Okay.
kinda knows what we do and where it's
Okay.
going, and
The library just seems like a natural place.
the only room, they don't have a room that has no doors, no windows. If people even knock on a door while you're taking those tests, the proctor will shut it off because they think you're cheating.
Wow.
I mean, it's a huge deal. They, when my people tried to, during COVID, they offered some of them at home. And oh my gosh, they'd make them pull up their sleeves and show them all their tattoos, and, cause who knows where people write answers, it's just crazy. They're really particular about whether, that it's a proctored state exam.
So let me ask this, and then
Yeah, we got it.
this would be my last question.
You got the
They
look,
don't believe it.
you got the look.
So why is this test so much harder? In my mind, I think I know why. I'm not sure I could pass this test based upon what you alluded to. Maybe, but why is it so much harder?
I don't know that answer exactly, but I do know they don't want people to be able to say, oh, you just got a GED. They want it to be rigorous. They want it to show the end of course exam information that's given. And you have to pass it all. I mean, you can graduate from high school with C's and D's, right? Gotta get them all. Gotta get 80%. And that's hard. And writing a persuasive essay for
80% of the whole, or 80% for each piece?
80% for each piece. And so, and the writing piece is separate even from the multiple choice grammar stuff. And the multiple choice grammar stuff is really hard for us because we speak Ozarkian, come on. We don't even speak standard English. And so that's hard for them. Writing is a persuasive essay that's hard for them. It's hard, and it's hard for us to choose one side. They read two articles, one's pro and one's con. The last one I saw was about graffiti. Was it a crime or was it expression, artful expression? And they read a piece about each one and then they have to choose a side. Well, we all kind of like to sit on that fence and say, yeah, this part of it's good, but, and if you sit on a fence in a persuasive essay, you don't get it. The math is really difficult. I don't really know why, but it is.
I'm gonna have some questions.
Okay.
All right, so the classroom rental lease, is that what we're just talking about, finding that kind of classroom to take these tests in, or is this something totally different?
That would be, if there is a room in our Chalet Village that he is just finishing remodeling, that he would rent us, that we could put those computers in to take those tests, but we could also use it for classrooms, for NA and AA and anger management. But yes, that classroom rent would be something that we could use that for.
Okay, and that is, you're thinking about it for that room
Yes,
at the
But I
Chalet?
said
Yes.
testing.
yes. Have you been to see some of the nice things he's done? He's remodeled that a lot.
Not inside, no, just from the outside.
He's not, he's doing the inside first, the outside still looks kind of crappy.
Care specialist, $30,000.
Mhm.
Who, where would that person be based?
At my AmeriCorps offices, which are in the Chalet Village.
Okay, and do you have somebody already in mind for that? Do you have somebody that you're going to promote to that?
I have one peer specialist now. I have one young man that I might be able to promote, but I haven't made that decision yet. We
Okay.
would certainly interview and decide in the community who would be the best person for that job. We have a lot of peer specialists working in Laclede County right now, and I'm really proud of that. Several people have peer specialists.
Working in Laclede County, or are they from
Working-
Laclede County?
working
Do they
in
live in Laclede
Yes.
County?
Live and work in Laclede County.
Okay, that's all I've got.
Well, thank you guys for letting me spend so much time with you. It's nice to visit with you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah,
Have a good day.
thank you.
This was much better than my big PowerPoint presentation. Thank you.
Well, I
No,
think
this was, we
it's,
did more,
I think for our room, it's more personal, if you will, as opposed to looking
Right.
at that.
you're right. I looked at one of the minutes to see how many people I thought would be here, and I thought, oh my, that's a lot of people. Must have been a big day that way. Must have been a big meeting that day. Thank you very much, guys. I appreciate all your help.
Thank you, Ms. Charles, good to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
All right, taking back up the agenda, public comments, items not listed on the agenda. Other business.
I believe so.
I do have a question. Old blowed out
Oh,
tires at Road and Bridge, ones that don't have a core value attached to them, that we either are waiting on a grant for someone to take those away, or we're hauling off somewhere. Have I said anything wrong just yet, or is there value to those tires? Can we sell those tires?
I was gonna say there was a place in, I think Stratford, I don't even know about this recently, cause you guys kinda done separate. But there was, I think, a place in Stratford that would take them for retail.
some of those that
Some
are
of
with
these
that
are-
Prompts Tire Service, who we still deal with.
Yeah.
Everything,
That's
they're
what
still
it is.
doing that, but there's some of those that is probably Eric's bringing up, that have, like you said, no value to them. They're not enough sidewall left to retread them. Because once you wear those sidewalls down and stuff as well, and they get a certain life on them, they can't be retreaded again, so to say. Especially if they've already been done a couple times, I believe. My best understanding of that.
Where are we getting tires from right now? Refresh my memory. Is it Cansler?
Well, I know Prompts is doing some of that.
We're getting them from,
And we buy some random,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, is there a disposal fee that we could pay them to take them back?
Or can we sell them
He's
for
got,
$5?
he's got a way out that he's got some people that's buying to make like